I woke up that morning thinking it would be just another normal day. I had no idea that within minutes, I'd be standing on my porch, staring at a piece of paper that would turn my entire world upside down. It was stuck to my front door, a bright red notice flapping slightly in the wind. My first thought? Great, another HOA warning about my trash cans or mailbox color. But the moment my eyes landed on the bold, capitalized words at the top, my stomach dropped. Final notice of property repossession, effective immediately. What? My property? Repossessed? How is that even possible? I snatched the paper off the door, my hands trembling as I flipped through the attached documents. Then, my heart stopped. The HOA claimed that I had unpaid community dues amounting to $14,700, and because of that, they had legally seized my home and sold it at auction. I almost dropped the papers. This had to be some kind of sick joke. I rushed inside, my pulse pounding as I grabbed my laptop and pulled up my bank transactions. I knew for a fact that I had paid every single HOA fee on time. I scrolled frantically, looking at months of payments. Then suddenly, I saw something that made my blood turn ice cold. My last 3 HOA payments were marked as refunded. Refunded? By who? I never requested any refunds. That's when the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. They did this on purpose. I grabbed my phone and called the HOA office, my hands sweaty as I gripped the device. It rang once, twice. Then, the number you're trying to reach is no longer in service. I hung up and redialed. Same thing. They had completely cut me off. That's when I heard the low rumble of an engine outside. I turned toward my window, my stomach twisting into knots. A black SUV was pulling up in front of my house. Then I saw the moving truck behind it. I bolted to the door just as a tall, suited man stepped out of the SUV, clipboard in hand. He looked calm, too calm, like he had done this 100 times before. "Mr. Carter?" he said, flipping through his paperwork. I crossed my arms. "Who the hell are you?" He didn't even blink. "I'm with the HOA legal department. As of 8 a.m. this morning, this property is no longer yours. You are required to vacate immediately." I laughed, a short, bitter laugh. "You can't be serious. This is my house. I paid for it." The man just smirked. "Actually, no. According to the documents, the HOA legally seized this property due to non-payment of dues, and it has already been sold. The new owners will be arriving shortly." "Sold? To who?" I took a step forward, my heart hammering against my ribs. "This is fraud. I have proof that I paid every single HOA fee." He tilted his head slightly, as if he'd heard this argument 100 times before. "You're welcome to contest it in court, Mr. Carter. But as of right now," he gestured around us, his smile widening, "you were trespassing on someone else's property." My blood boiled. I opened my mouth to argue, to fight back, but then I saw the moving truck driver stepping out. They were already preparing to take my stuff. This wasn't just some paperwork mistake. They were actually kicking me out of my own home. I stood frozen on my own porch, gripping the fraudulent eviction notice so tightly my knuckles turned white. This wasn't real. This couldn't be happening. But it was. The moving truck driver stepped onto my driveway, talking into a radio as if this was just another routine job. A second later, 2 more workers hopped out, glancing at me like I was the one trespassing. "Whoa, whoa, whoa," I barked, stepping in front of the door. "You're not touching anything. This is my house." The suited HOA official clicked his pen and let out a fake, exaggerated sigh, flipping through his clipboard like I was some minor inconvenience. "Mr. Carter, you don't want to make this difficult. We have every legal right to remove you and your belongings today." I clenched my fists. Every fiber of my being told me to punch that smug look off his face. But I couldn't. I needed to think, needed to figure out how the hell this was even happening. "This is fraud," I snapped. "You know damn well I never missed a payment." He shrugged, his expression completely unfazed. "Our records state otherwise. If you want to dispute it, take it up with the HOA board." "Take it up with the board? The same corrupt people who orchestrated this?" Rage burned through my chest, but before I could say anything else, something caught my eye, a familiar face across the street. Mrs. Thompson, my neighbor for the last 8 years. She stood on her porch, clutching her robe, watching the scene unfold with wide, guilty eyes. She knew. I stormed across the street, my voice shaking with anger. "You knew about this, didn't you?" She flinched, glancing at the suited man before whispering. "They sent out letters to the board members last week. We were told you refused to cooperate." "Lies. All of it." I let out a bitter laugh, running a hand through my hair. "So that's how they pulled this off? By feeding you all their garbage and turning the entire neighborhood against me." She swallowed hard, her voice barely audible. "They said you were behind on payments, that you ignored the warnings." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Did you really believe that? In all these years, have I ever been late on a single HOA fee?" Her expression wavered. She knew the answer. But before she could speak, another SUV pulled up, and this time, I knew exactly who it was. The HOA president himself, Ethan Ramsey, a man so corrupt he made politicians look honest. He stepped out of the car in his usual cheap Navy suit and a smirk that could piss off a saint. "Mr. Carter," he greeted, adjusting his watch as he approached. "I was wondering when you'd start causing a scene." My fingers curled into fists. This wasn't a mistake. It was personal. "You think you can just steal my home and walk away from this?" I hissed. He chuckled, glancing at the moving truck like he was admiring his work. "Steal? No, no, no. This is simply enforcing community regulations." "Regulations?" I scoffed. "You forged those payment records. You rigged the system and had my home illegally auctioned off." Ethan put a hand over his chest, feigning innocence. "Illegal? Please." We followed every HOA guideline to the letter. Maybe if you had read the fine print in your contract, you would have seen our authority to place liens for delinquent fees. I stepped forward, close enough to see the smug glint in his eyes. "I paid every single one of those fees. You refunded them on purpose so you could claim non-payment." His smirk widened. "Prove it." My breath hitched. He knew exactly what he was doing. This wasn't just about money. This was about power. "You had no right." "Oh, but we did." He cut me off. "And in 20 minutes, the new owner will be here." My blood turned to ice. The new owner. I glanced at my house, my mind racing. Was it another HOA board member? A friend of Ethan's? A corporate investor? And then he dropped the bombshell. "Oh, and you might recognize the buyer," he added casually, glancing down the street. "After all, it's someone very close to you." I stopped breathing. The realization hit me like a truck. This wasn't just about money. This was a setup, and whoever had bought my house was in on it. I couldn't move. For a second, the world around me blurred. Ethan's smug face, the moving truck, the papers in my hand. Everything faded into the background. Because standing in front of me, looking as calm as ever, was Olivia, my ex-fiancée. She took off her sunglasses, her perfectly manicured nails brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. That same irritating smirk I remembered from our final argument curled on her lips. "Hello, Carter. Long time no see." I felt my jaw tighten. This wasn't happening. I glanced down at the official ownership documents clutched in my hand, my fingers digging into the paper so hard it nearly ripped. And there it was in bold print. "William Sterling, new owner." I inhaled sharply, my mind piecing everything together at once. Her father, the man who despised me from the moment we met, the man who had sworn up and down that I would never be good enough for his daughter. And now, he owned my house. I tore my gaze away from the document, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Tell me this is some sick joke, Olivia." She let out a small laugh, the kind that made my skin crawl. "Carter, you always were dramatic." I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "You knew about this. You were part of it." Her smirk widened slightly. "Part of it? Oh, Carter. I'm the one who made it happen." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Ethan folded his arms across his chest, watching the exchange like he was enjoying every second. "This just keeps getting better," he murmured. I ignored him. This wasn't about the HOA anymore. This was personal. "You planned this?" I demanded. Olivia sighed, as if she was getting bored of the conversation. "You act like this was some master plan, Carter. It's just business. Just business." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. They had destroyed my life, ripped my home away from me. And to her, it was just another business transaction. My fists clenched. So what now? You get to play house in my home while I rot on the streets. She waved a hand dismissively. Don't be so dramatic. I don't plan on living here. I narrowed my eyes. Then why buy it? She hesitated, just for a second, but that moment of silence told me everything I needed to know. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. This isn't about the house, is it? Ethan raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the shift in the conversation. Even he hadn't expected this. Olivia glanced down at her nails. Daddy wanted to expand his real estate portfolio. I simply pointed him in the right direction. Lies. I knew her better than that. This was never about her father's real estate business. This was about power, about control, about making sure I never forgot who had the upper hand. My voice was dangerously calm when I spoke next. So what happens now, Olivia? You expect me to just walk away? She exhaled slowly, her expression softening. Just for a second. Carter, look, she said, tilting her head. You can fight this. Hire lawyers. Drag it through court. But by the time you win anything, you'll already be homeless. The words cut deeper than I expected. Because I knew she was right. That was the real game here. Even if I fought back legally, it would take months, maybe even years. And in the meantime, I'd be out on the street, struggling to survive. Ethan clapped his hands together, snapping me out of my thoughts. All right, lovebirds, this is fun, but we're on a schedule. The movers need to start clearing things out. He turned to Olivia. Unless, of course, you'd like to offer your dear ex some extra time? She hesitated again, but then sighed. No, we should move forward. And just like that, the decision was made. I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. They thought this was over. They thought they had won. But they were wrong. Because if they wanted to fight, I was going to give them a war. My heart pounded in my chest as Olivia turned away, her heels clicking against the pavement like the final nail in my coffin. The movers were already unloading their equipment, preparing to clear out my house like it was some abandoned storage unit. Ethan, still standing smugly beside me, clapped a hand on my shoulder. Tough break, Carter. But hey, maybe next time you'll actually read the fine print. I shrugged his hand off, my entire body tensing with rage. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to wipe that arrogant smirk off his face. But I couldn't afford to lose control. Not now. I had to be smart. They had the upper hand for now. I inhaled deeply, forcing my voice to stay calm. This isn't over, Ethan. His smirk widened. Oh, Carter, it's already over. I ignored him and pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number I needed. My lawyer. I pressed call. Ring. Ring. No answer. I cursed under my breath and fired off a text. Emergency. HOA fraud. Call me ASP. Ethan sighed dramatically. Calling for backup already? Face it, Carter. No lawyer can undo what's already been done. I turned to him, my fists clenched at my sides. I don't need a lawyer to prove what you did was illegal. I just need time. His expression flickered for half a second. So fast most people wouldn't have caught it. But I did. Ethan wasn't afraid of the law. He was afraid of exposure. HOAs like his thrived in the shadows, manipulating homeowners through hidden fees, fraudulent paperwork, and intimidation tactics. But the moment their dirty tactics were exposed to the public, that's when they crumbled. And that's exactly what I was going to do. Underscore 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 underscore. I pulled up my camera app, aiming it directly at Ethan. State your name and position within the HOA. His smirk faltered. What? You heard me, I said. Since you love talking so much, why don't you tell everyone your role in this fraudulent property seizure? A few neighbors had gathered at the edge of their lawns, watching the scene unfold. Some were even recording. Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. Cute. But I don't need to explain anything to you. I turned the camera toward Olivia. And you? Did you, or did you not knowingly participate in an illegal real estate transaction to defraud a homeowner? She scowled, flipping her sunglasses back on. Carter, stop being dramatic. I kept recording. Oh, I'm being dramatic? You manipulated this entire sale to benefit your father. That's a conflict of interest, and it's illegal. More whispers spread through the small crowd forming around us. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. This was working. I lowered the phone slightly. You really think I'm just going to let you walk away with this? Ethan chuckled again, but this time it wasn't as confident. I had planted the seed of doubt. You can record all you want, Carter, he said, his voice colder now. But none of this changes the fact that in less than an hour, you won't have a roof over your head. I locked eyes with him, my blood burning. We'll see about that. I hit send. The video went straight to my lawyer and onto my private social media. It was only a matter of time before the truth spread. Underscore. I had to stall. If I could delay the eviction long enough, I could find a legal loophole, something that would buy me the time I needed to stop this. Then, I had an idea. I turned toward the moving truck workers, who were standing near the front door, waiting for the go-ahead. Hey, I called, walking straight toward them. Let me see your work order. One of them, a burly guy in his 40s, frowned. What? I gestured toward the clipboard in his hand. Your job order. Let me see who authorized this move. He hesitated, glancing at Ethan. Ethan's eyes flared with irritation. You don't need to show him anything. Just get started. I took a step closer. Actually, if your company is participating in an illegal eviction, that makes you an accessory to fraud. So either you show me that order, or I'll make sure your company gets dragged into a lawsuit. The workers exchanged uneasy glances. Then, hesitantly, the older guy flipped the clipboard around and handed it to me. I scanned the document quickly. There it was, the signature of authorization. My stomach twisted. It wasn't signed by a legal court. It was signed by Ethan Ramsey. HOA presidents don't have the legal authority to issue eviction orders. My lips curled into a slow smile. Gotcha. I turned back to the workers. This order is invalid. If you continue moving my stuff, you're violating state eviction laws. The lead mover paled slightly. Wait, this isn't from a court? Nope, I said, handing him back the clipboard. And if you go through with this, I'll make sure you're held accountable for trespassing on private property. Ethan stepped forward, his confidence finally cracking. Don't listen to him. Just do your job. But the damage was done. The movers hesitated. The older one turned to his crew. We're not touching anything until we see an official court order. I folded my arms, staring Ethan down. Now the clock was ticking for him. If he pushed forward, he'd have to risk legal consequences. If he backed down, he'd have to explain to Olivia and her father why his perfect little eviction plan just hit a wall. For the first time since this started, I was in control. But I knew one thing for sure. This war wasn't over. Not even close. For the first time since this nightmare started, Ethan Ramsey was rattled. His carefully crafted plan was falling apart right in front of him. He thought he could bulldoze me out of my home without resistance. But now, he had a crowd of neighbors watching, a moving company refusing to continue, and a video recording of his fraudulent eviction order spreading online. He wasn't winning anymore. And judging by the way his jaw clenched, he hated it. I folded my arms, keeping my tone cool and even. So, Ethan, what's the plan now? He exhaled sharply, then pulled out his phone. Dialed a number. My stomach tightened. Who the hell was he calling? Then I heard it. The sirens. A police cruiser turned onto the street, the flashing red and blue lights reflecting off my windows. The small crowd of neighbors murmured in confusion. Some even stepped back. I glanced at Olivia, who was still standing near her car. She wasn't smirking anymore. No, her face was blank, like even she wasn't sure this was the right move. Ethan, however, looked relieved, like he had just played his trump card. I clenched my jaw. He wasn't backing down. He was doubling down. He called the cops on me. Underscore. The police arrive. Two officers stepped out of the car. One older, with sharp eyes that had clearly seen too much bullshit in his career. The other younger, still fresh but alert. Ethan immediately walked toward them, his voice calm and authoritative, like he had rehearsed this moment. "Officers, thank you for coming so quickly," he said smoothly. "We have a trespassing situation. This man refuses to vacate the property." "Trespassing?" I took a step forward, my blood boiling. "I own this house." Ethan turned to me, his fake concern so well-practiced I wanted to punch him. "Actually, Carter, you don't. The HOA legally repossessed this property. You've been officially evicted. These officers are here to escort you off the premises." The younger officer looked slightly uncertain, glancing between us. The older one, however, narrowed his eyes. "Sir," he asked Ethan, "do you have the official court-ordered eviction paperwork?" I smirked. "Now, let's see him lie his way out of this." Ethan hesitated too long. I jumped in before he could spin another lie. "He doesn't." "Because there isn't one." The officers turned to me. I held up my phone, showing them the video I had recorded earlier. Ethan's own authorization signature on the eviction order. The older officer frowned. "This isn't from a court. HOA presidents don't have the authority to issue eviction orders." Ethan let out a forced chuckle. "It's a community enforcement policy." The officer's expression didn't change. "That's not how the law works, Mr. Ramsey." A few of the neighbors snickered. The smugness in Ethan's face vanished completely. The younger officer turned to me. "Sir, do you have proof of homeownership?" I nodded and pulled up my email, showing them my mortgage statement, bank records, and HOA payment history. "This house was stolen through fraudulent documents," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I never missed a payment. They refunded them to fake a default. It's all on my records." The officers examined my screen. I saw it in their faces. They knew I was telling the truth. The older cop sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "This is a civil dispute, not a criminal one." He turned back to Ethan. "Until there's a legally signed court eviction order, you cannot remove him from the property." Boom. I saw Ethan's entire body tense. He was losing control, and he knew it. The older officer turned to the movers. "Pack it up, gentlemen. You're done here." The head mover didn't need to be told twice. He waved his crew back, shaking his head as he climbed into the truck. The police turned back to Ethan. "Sir, if you attempt to move his property again without a legal order, you can be charged with unlawful eviction." Ethan looked like he wanted to explode, but he had no options left. He turned to Olivia. "Do something." She shook her head slowly. "Ethan, we lost this round." Her voice was low, controlled, but I could see the irritation in her expression. She didn't like losing either. I took a step forward, lowering my voice, so only they could hear. "You thought this was going to be easy, that I'd roll over and let you take everything from me." I shook my head. "You underestimated me." Ethan shot me a deadly glare. "This isn't over, Carter," he spat. I smiled coldly. "No, it's not. I'm just getting started." Ethan may have lost the first round, but I knew men like him didn't just give up. They regroup. They escalate. And I was right. The police had barely driven off, and the movers were still packing up their equipment when Olivia turned to Ethan, lowering her voice. "We need a new strategy." Ethan's jaw was tight, his eyes burning into me. He wasn't just mad. He was humiliated. He had played his biggest card, the illegal eviction, and it had backfired in front of the entire neighborhood. Now he needed a way to hit me where it really hurt. And that's exactly what he did. Underscore, 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 underscore. The fake lawsuit. It started with a letter. A thick envelope appeared in my mailbox the next morning, stamped with a fancy HOA legal emblem. I opened it, and as soon as my eyes scanned the first few lines, I felt my blood run cold. Notice of pending lawsuit. The HOA was suing me. The claims were laughable, but dangerous. Defamation. For publicly misrepresenting HOA officials in a way that caused damage to their reputation. Interference with community operations. For obstructing an authorized eviction process, even though it was fraudulent. Breach of contract. For allegedly violating neighborhood bylaws by failing to comply with HOA regulations. It was all a lie. A desperate attempt to bury me in legal fees and force me to surrender. And it almost worked. Because when I showed the letter to my lawyer, she sighed and gave me a look I didn't like. These claims are ridiculous, she said, flipping through the pages. But that doesn't mean they won't make your life hell. I clenched my fists. How much is this going to cost to fight? She hesitated. Too long. At least $10,000 to start, she finally said. And that's if we can get it dismissed quickly. If this drags on, it could be much worse. That was the real strategy. They didn't care about winning the case. They just wanted to bleed me dry. I exhaled sharply. I had savings, but not enough to fight a prolonged legal battle. Ethan was backed by HOA funds. I was just one guy, and he knew it. The lawsuit was only the first attack. The next it came online. I woke up the next morning to dozens of messages. Friends, coworkers, even distant family members were texting me, all asking the same thing. Hey, is this about you? I frowned and clicked the link someone sent me. It was a Facebook post from the HOA's official community page. And at the top, a picture of my house. The caption read, "Unfortunately, due to serious violations and repeated disruptions, we have been forced to take legal action against a troublesome resident. We value our peaceful community and will not tolerate individuals who fail to follow the rules." The comments were brutal. Ugh, another entitled homeowner who thinks they don't have to follow HOA guidelines. Good. If you don't want to respect the community, you shouldn't live there. Honestly, if he's being sued, there must be a reason. HOA wouldn't just do that for no reason. I felt sick. Ethan was turning the entire neighborhood against me. And it was working. The silent treatment. By the end of the week, I felt it everywhere. The shift. Neighbors who used to wave when I walked by now turned away. At the grocery store, I caught whispers. People I barely knew were suddenly acting like I was some kind of criminal. Even my regular coffee shop barista, who had known my order by heart, suddenly treated me like a stranger. This was Ethan's real power. He wasn't just trying to take my home. He was trying to erase me from the community. And worst of all, it was working. I had never felt more alone. The breaking point. I was one step away from giving up. That's exactly where they wanted me. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the lawsuit papers, my phone in my hand. My lawyer's number was dialed in, my thumb hovering over the call button. I could settle. If I agreed to leave quietly, Ethan would probably drop the lawsuit. That was the deal they were hoping I'd take. And for a split second, I almost did. But then, a knock at the door. I frowned. Nobody visited me anymore. I opened the door and froze, because standing on my porch was Benjamin Carter, a former HOA board member, and the man who had mysteriously disappeared from the community months ago. I narrowed my eyes. "What are you doing here?" His expression was serious. "We need to talk. Now." I opened the door, my pulse still unsteady from everything that had happened in the past few days. Benjamin Carter stood there, his eyes scanning the street before settling on me. He looked different from the last time I had seen him, more cautious, more careful, like a man who had learned the hard way that trust was dangerous. I hadn't seen him in months, not since he had suddenly stepped down from the HOA board with barely an explanation. "Can I come in?" he asked. I hesitated. For all I knew, this could be another one of Ethan's setups. But something about his expression, the way he glanced over his shoulder as if expecting someone to be watching, made me step aside. I closed the door behind him and folded my arms, waiting. "What do you want?" I asked. Benjamin exhaled, running a hand through his graying hair. "I heard what happened. The lawsuit, the eviction attempt, the smear campaign." His voice was low, edged with something that sounded like regret. "And I know exactly how they pulled it off." I stiffened. "You were part of this, weren't you?" His jaw tightened. "Not like you think. When I was on the board, Ethan started making decisions that didn't add up. Homeowners suddenly violating rules that never existed before. Liens being placed on properties over mysterious, unpaid fees. But the worst part? Whenever I asked for official records, they were either missing or altered. I frowned. Are you saying they've done this before? He nodded. At least 3 times in the last 2 years. People just like you. The HOA pressured them with fake fines and legal threats until they either sold their homes at a loss or left quietly. And those homes? They all ended up in the hands of someone connected to Ethan. Developers, investors, private buyers willing to pay HOA board members under the table. I felt a wave of nausea. And you didn't do anything? Benjamin's face darkened. I tried. I went to the other board members, told them what I was seeing, but they weren't on it or too scared to speak up. The HOA had dirt on almost everyone. If they couldn't bribe you, they'd threaten to bury you in legal fees or get your home audited for compliance issues until you gave in. I gritted my teeth. So why now? Why come to me? He sighed. Because you fought back. None of the others did. They let themselves get steamrolled. But you? You exposed Ethan's illegal eviction attempt. You have proof, and now you have attention. I frowned. Attention? He nodded. The video you posted? The one showing Ethan's fraudulent eviction order? It's spreading. Fast. Some homeowners are already starting to question things. A few even reached out to me, asking if what happened to you was legit. A small spark of hope flickered inside me. For the first time in days, it felt like I wasn't entirely alone. But it won't be enough, Benjamin warned. Not yet. Ethan will find a way to bury this. He still has control over the HOA, the legal team, and most of the board. If you want to take him down, you'll need more than just a viral video. I narrowed my eyes. What are you suggesting? Benjamin hesitated, then reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a flash drive. He held it up between 2 fingers. These are internal HOA financial records that I managed to get my hands on before I left. It proves everything: illegal fines, fabricated violations, and under-the-table property transfers. I stared at the flash drive, my pulse quickening. Why do you still have it? His mouth twisted. Because I wanted a backup in case they ever came after me. But I never had the guts to use it. Until now. I took the flash drive, feeling the weight of it in my palm. This could destroy him. Benjamin nodded. If you use it right, yeah. But you'll need to be smart. Ethan has connections, money, and influence. He'll try to discredit you. Maybe even threaten legal action. But if you hit him with hard proof in the right places, publicly, legally, he won't be able to weasel his way out of it. A slow determination settled over me. I had been playing defense since this all started, reacting to every move Ethan made. But now, for the first time, I had something he didn't expect. A weapon. I met Benjamin's eyes. Then let's take him down. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the flash drive as if it held the power to undo everything Ethan had done. In a way it did. If what Benjamin said was true, this wasn't just a case of my home being stolen. It was a full-scale operation of corruption, manipulation, and fraud designed to strip homeowners of their properties and funnel them into the hands of people with power. The worst part? It had been working for years. Benjamin sat across from me, watching my reaction carefully. You can't just dump this online and hope for the best, he warned. Ethan will spin it. He'll say it's fabricated, that you're just a bitter homeowner trying to get revenge. You need to be strategic. I nodded, my mind already racing. If I go straight to the police, will they even care? He hesitated. Not unless you can prove intent. Right now, these files show illegal transactions, but without a clear connection to Ethan, it could just look like accounting errors. The HOA has lawyers who will bury this in legal jargon before it ever reaches a courtroom. That wasn't what I wanted to hear. So what do I need? He leaned forward. A direct link. Proof that Ethan or the board knowingly participated in fraud. I exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over my face. And how the hell am I supposed to get that? Benjamin hesitated again, like he was debating whether to say what was on his mind. There's one way. I looked at him. I'm listening. He folded his hands on the table. You need Ethan to admit it himself. I frowned. How? His eyes darkened. You need to make him believe he's already won. That you're broken. That you're willing to make a deal. I stared at him, realization dawning. You want me to bait him? Benjamin nodded. Ethan is arrogant. He loves to gloat, loves to remind people that he's in control. If you approach him, act like you're desperate, he might slip. If you can get him on record admitting to what he did, he won't be able to talk his way out of it. I swallowed hard. This was dangerous. If Ethan suspected anything, he'd bury me in legal trouble before I even got the chance to expose him. But if it worked, it could be the final nail in his coffin. What if he doesn't take the bait? I asked. Benjamin smirked. Then you make sure he does. I tapped the flash drive against the table, thinking. I needed leverage, something that would make Ethan believe I was on the verge of breaking, ready to cut a deal. Then it hit me. The lawsuit. I murmured. Benjamin raised an eyebrow. What about it? I leaned back in my chair. He filed it to pressure me, financially, right? To make me feel like I was backed into a corner with no way out? Benjamin nodded slowly. So I'll give him exactly what he wants, I said. I'll go to him, tell him I can't afford to fight the lawsuit, that I just want this to be over. Benjamin grinned. And then you get him talking. I clenched my jaw, determination settling over me. I had been playing defense for too long. It was time to take control. I'll set up a meeting, I said, already planning my next move. Let's see how much Ethan loves running his mouth when he thinks he's already won. Setting up the meeting was easier than I expected. Ethan was predictable. He thrived on control, on the idea that people feared him, that no one would dare challenge his authority. So when I sent a message through one of the HOA's administrative emails, claiming that I wanted to discuss a resolution to the lawsuit, he responded almost immediately. Meet me at the HOA office tomorrow at 2 p.m. Let's talk terms. It was exactly what I wanted, but I knew better than to walk into his den unprepared. Benjamin and I spent the rest of the night going through the HOA records on the flash drive, looking for anything I could use to push Ethan into a confession. It was a treasure trove of corruption, dozens of falsified fines, properties seized under false pretenses, and payments funneled through back channels to third-party buyers with direct ties to Ethan. But Benjamin was right. None of it explicitly proved that he had orchestrated it. I needed him to say it himself. I had one shot at this. The next day, I arrived at the HOA office right on time. The receptionist barely glanced at me before motioning toward Ethan's door. I knocked once before stepping inside. Ethan was already seated at his desk, looking relaxed, like a king welcoming a defeated soldier to negotiate surrender. He gestured to the chair across from him. Carter, glad you finally decided to be reasonable. I forced a small, exhausted sigh, playing the part. I just want this lawsuit to go away. Ethan smirked. That's what I like to hear. I leaned forward. Look, I get it. The HOA needs to protect its interests. I fought back, and now I'm paying the price. I can't afford a legal battle. So let's talk about what it's going to take to settle this quietly. Ethan watched me carefully, as if trying to figure out whether I was serious or bluffing. Then he chuckled. You see, Carter, this is why you were never going to win. You let your pride get in the way. If you had just fallen in line from the beginning, you wouldn't be in this mess. I gritted my teeth but kept my expression neutral. So, what do you want? He leaned back in his chair, clasping his hands together. Simple. You drop the lawsuit, retract your accusations, and sign a public statement admitting that the HOA acted lawfully. In return, I'll make sure the fees disappear. No more fines, no more legal battles. I pretended to hesitate, then let out a breath like I was coming to terms with my defeat. And my house. Ethan shrugged. It's not yours anymore. But I can put in a word with the new owner, see if they'd be willing to sell it back to you. At a reasonable price, of course. I stared at him, my stomach twisting with anger. He was treating my home, my life, like a bargaining chip. But I couldn't let my emotions take over. Not yet. Instead, I shook my head, sighing. I should have known. I never stood a chance against you, did I? Ethan grinned. No, you didn't. And then he made his mistake. He leaned forward, lowering his voice as if he was letting me in on a secret. Do you have any idea how easy it was to set this up? A couple of refunded payments, some conveniently misplaced notices, and suddenly you're the perfect example of what happens when someone doesn't respect the HOA's authority. My heart pounded, but I forced my expression to stay neutral. So this was always the plan? Force me into debt? Take my house? Ethan chuckled. Not just you. You were just the latest one. You think you're special, Carter? This is how we operate. We keep this community clean, profitable, and under control. People like you? You're just obstacles that need to be removed. I felt the weight of my phone pressing against my leg, the recording app running. I had him, but I needed one last confirmation. I exhaled, shaking my head. I should have just played along, huh? Ethan smirked. Exactly. But don't worry. In a few months, when you're living in some cramped apartment wondering how you lost everything, you'll finally understand why the HOA runs this place. Not homeowners like you. I leaned back, forcing a small smile. Yeah, we'll see about that. Then I ended the recording. I walked out of Ethan's office with my heart pounding, but I forced myself to stay calm. If I looked too eager, too triumphant, he might suspect something. I had to play it cool, act like a man who had just accepted his defeat. But inside, I was burning with adrenaline. I had everything I needed, a full, undeniable confession straight from Ethan's mouth. Benjamin was waiting for me in my car, his eyes scanning my face the second I slid into the driver's seat. "Did you get it?" he asked, his voice tense. I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, and played back the recording. Ethan's voice filled the car, smug and arrogant. "This is how we operate. We keep this community clean, profitable, and under control. People like you? You're just obstacles that need to be removed." Benjamin let out a low whistle. "That's it. That's the smoking gun." I nodded, gripping the phone tightly. "Now we just have to make sure everyone hears it." Benjamin thought for a second, then pulled out his own phone. "The HOA's legal team will try to claim this is doctored, that it's fake. But if we go public fast and loud, they won't be able to bury it." I already knew exactly where to start. First, I sent the recording to my lawyer. Within minutes, she responded, "This is solid evidence of fraud and abuse of power. I'll start preparing legal action." Then I uploaded the full recording, unedited, raw, and time-stamped, to a private link and shared it with local news outlets. If the HOA had connections within city government, they'd try to shut the story down. But a viral scandal? That was something even Ethan wouldn't be able to control. Within an hour, the video was everywhere. Neighbors started forwarding it to each other. People who had supported the HOA suddenly weren't so sure anymore. Even some of the most loyal board members were suspiciously quiet. The narrative had shifted, and then the real fallout began. The first major blow came when the police showed up at Ethan's house the next morning. My lawyer had moved fast, filing a complaint backed by financial records, witness statements, and now an audio confession. Ethan was officially under investigation for fraud, property theft, and illegal business dealings. The second blow came when Olivia's father, William Sterling, suddenly backed out of the home purchase. Whether it was because of legal pressure or because he realized just how dirty Ethan's operation was, I didn't know. But within 48 hours, my house was no longer in his name. The final blow came at the emergency HOA meeting that same week. Ethan tried to defend himself, tried to spin the story, but it was useless. The board had already seen the evidence. Some of them were guilty too, but they knew if they went down with him, they'd lose everything. So they did the only thing they could. They turned on him. In a unanimous vote, Ethan was stripped of his position as HOA president and permanently banned from holding any community authority. But that wasn't all. As part of the legal settlement, the HOA was forced to void all fraudulent property seizures, compensate affected homeowners, and introduce new policies that prevented unchecked financial abuse. It wasn't just a victory. It was a reckoning. And Ethan? He lost everything. The lawsuit against me was dropped, but the one against him was only just beginning. With the fraud charges stacking up, his future wasn't looking bright. And as I stood on my porch, watching him leave the HOA office for the last time, I felt something close to satisfaction. He caught my eye, his expression full of rage and humiliation. But I just smiled. "You underestimated me," I said simply. Ethan didn't respond. He just got into his car and sped off. For the first time in weeks, I took a deep breath. The battle was over. My home was mine again, and the HOA? They'd never try this again.